Hey, it's Alicia from mobilitymastery.com, and this is week 3 of Fast Fascia Facts. Let's get nerdy. All right, so I'm a super dork. I invite you to dork out with me anytime you want. But the way that this works with Fast Fascia Facts is I'm going to lay out 3 facts here about fascia, and then I'm going to give you my theories on them about either why it's important to know about or how to actually apply this information to your life or how I use it in my life or with my clients. And then I'm going to invite you to actually chime in with your thoughts. So let's dive in. Number 1, fasciacytes respond to loaded compression and shearing. How heavy does that load need to be? So this might sound really familiar and you might be like, didn't we talk about this last week? Yes, indeed we did. Sometimes we can zoom in on the science and those fascia facts, right? And talk about how important they are. But if it's not applicable or you don't know how to use it for yourself, then what's the point? So the point of this fascia fact is to actually extract out of that how you can use it safely and effectively at home with your own body and your own fascia. So this was inspired by some questions I was getting from people when I was sharing these fascia facts with my email community in early 2019. And I'm so glad people asked because this is an interesting question. Some people out there claim that fascia will not respond to a heavy load, that it'll simply fight back, and that, in fact, some people argue you can't even change fascia, that it can withstand up to 2,000 pounds of force. And we're going to talk about that in another episode of Fast Fascia Facts. But the fact that fasciacytes respond to compression and shearing is interesting, and the fact that it has to be a loaded compression, right? So it means some amount of weight. And what I'm about to tell you is based on my work with my private practice clients, which I've been doing since 2008, with my method of fascia release called kinetics. Now, with kinetics, I'm actually stepping on people. So I'm using my foot or feet. So yes, sometimes 2 feet, and it would be my full body weight in that case, to step on people to give a loaded compression. And then I'm cueing them or coaching them through a series of movements that together, so the loaded compression and the shearing, or their movements, creates a shearing effect. So how heavy does that load need to be? Well, it's not as simple as it needs to be 5 pounds or it needs to be 25 pounds. There are a couple things you really ought to take into consideration here to get the best results for you and your body. So number 1 priority here is if you don't feel safe with that loaded compression, you probably aren't going to get a result. Your fascia will get cued to respond by your nervous system, which we're going to talk about in number 3 here, to protect you from whatever threat is coming in, right? Because if you feel unsafe, your body's going to assume something bad is happening, and that something bad just happens to be, maybe you're getting on a foam roller, or maybe you're in my office and you're getting stepped on. So if you don't feel safe, that's my number 1 priority, is let's figure out how to make you feel safe so that we can actually get in there and be effective and not have your body fight back. So for some people, this might honestly be 1 or 2 pounds. This has not, in my experience, been the norm, and you're going to have a hard time getting an actual result, like a good result with 1 or 2 pounds. But if you have to start there and work up. But typically with most of my clients, like even people who have some degree of, triggers for not feeling safe in their nervous system, usually the norm is that people can withstand 20 to 30 pounds, somewhere in there, of me stepping on them. So keep in mind that this is an outside intelligent force, me stepping on someone when I'm doing kinetics. It's a little different when you are placing your weight on a foam roller, for instance, and your fascia is actually coming into the roller, right? So there's a little bit of a difference here, and I believe that actually impacts the shearing effect you're going to get. And we'll talk about that here. But essentially what I want you to know is that I've discovered that the more weight you can actually take while still feeling safe, the better it is for your results, basically. You're gonna get faster results in a shorter period of time with more weight, as long as you feel safe. So the answer for how heavy is very personal. So it's however much weight you can handle while still feeling safe. And by the way, I always love telling people you can feel extremely uncomfortable. Like you could have a lot of sensation happening. You're like, whoa, that's really tender, that's really sore, oh my gosh, that's intense, and still feel safe. It's that feeling of not being safe or not feeling safe doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the intensity. It may have to do with your nervous system triggers, your past, your history, and maybe some of what's stored in your body. So again, I'm just going to reiterate, how heavy do you need to go? It's however much weight you can put on a roller. Let's say I'm going to assume right now that you're at home working with my self-help techniques, since most of you aren't doing kinetics, though some of you are if you're my students right now and you're watching this. But it's however much weight you can take. So try to take as much as you can while still feeling safe. That's the equation for that. And it definitely takes some playing around and some practice and actually overdoing it, or taking too much weight and realizing, nope, I actually don't feel safe doing that, to really find that sweet spot for yourself. And then keep in mind that the more frequently you do fascia release and the more weight you take, you actually build up capacity, and as your fascia gets healthier, you can take more weight. So one thing I really want to mention here is if you have really brittle, dehydrated fascia, you don't want to put a lot of weight on it, even if you can handle it, even if you are like, you love intensity and you just want to go for it, because there is some potential there for damaging your fascia or your tendons and ligaments if it's really brittle. So I would, again, just like take however much weight you feel like you can. And the whole brittle thing isn't super common, to be honest. Most of us have dense fascia or, areas of restriction or adhesions, right? Knots. It's the rare person that is like really stringy and brittle. But even then, fascia is super resilient. It can withstand quite a bit of weight even when it's unhealthy. So just use your own judgment, and we're gonna move on to number 2. All right, dense adhesed fascial fibers need to be sheared and won't respond to stretching or manual manipulation that does not shear. And I actually just realized I probably worded this a little incorrectly. So I'm gonna correct it verbally, and I'm going to have it put on screen in the way that I meant. But this is true when it comes to fasciacytes. So if you are trying to activate a fasciacyte, which we talked about in episode 2, and we will link to that in the description below this video if you're not caught up. If you're trying to activate a fasciacyte or fasciacytes within your fascial system, which of course synthesize hyaluronic acid and then imbibe the water you drink and create that cellular hydration that you're looking for, as well as a watery or a water-rich ECM or extracellular matrix. Basically, if you want to be up to 70% water and maintain that water content and increase your spring, then you need to shear those fascial fibers, and they won't necessarily respond, or the fasciacytes won't, to stretching or manual manipulation. That does not shear. So we did talk about this, and I'm just bringing it up again because I think there is some confusion here, and I want to hopefully make it clear for you. And I'm sorry that I wrote this out a little weirdly, but basically what I want you to know is that most forms of massage, in my opinion, not all of them, but most of them, don't effectively shear fascial restriction or fascial adhesions or dense areas of fascia where the fibers are stuck together. And so they're not necessarily not getting a benefit. What they're doing is actually activating fibroblasts that synthesize collagen. So many wordy words today. That synthesize collagen. And that's definitely a good thing, and we need a lot of collagen, right? Our tendons and ligaments need collagen. That ECM needs to be made up in part of collagen, but 70% water. the human being is supposed to be, right? And not just in our fascial system, it's supposed to be, distributed throughout the body. So super important to be more water than just about anything else. And so if we are constantly doing things like stretching and getting, massages or doing other manual modalities of body work that don't actually get that shearing effect, then we're going to become more dense, actually, in my opinion, than watery, because we're going to become more collagen than water. I hope that you're following along with me, and I hope this is making sense. So the point, though, of me writing out this fact is to answer the question, what the heck is shearing? Because I talk about it a lot, and I've gotten so many questions from you guys just asking, like, I kind of think I know what the shearing is, and I know you say it's the clunk, but what the heck does it actually mean? Well, I have a drawing for you, and I'm going to go get it right now. All right. So this is my drawing of a geologic shear, which I invite you to Google. I encourage you to do this if you are super nerdy like me. And I can only hold this up so long. I don't want to mess up my board here by actually putting it up. But what I want to point out to you real quick, and then I got to put it down or my arm is going to fall off, is of course this arrow is indicating that a force is taking this piece of, in this case, if it's a geologic shear, it's a piece of earth, right? Like maybe there's an earthquake or maybe a shift happens in the earth. So it's taking it this way while simultaneously this piece is going that way. So somewhat self-explanatory, right? Pretty simple. Two pieces moving in opposite directions that create a separation. That's pretty much it. They were stuck together. Maybe they were one piece and now they're two. Okay, so that's just one visual that I have for you, and we're going to give you some others as well. But what I find really interesting is I couldn't find hardly any, and again, I didn't like scour the internet for months, but I couldn't really find any references to shear when it comes to the body, the human body. But apparently it's common knowledge in two places, geology and architecture. So that was super interesting to me, but I was like, whoa, all of these visuals and the way they're explaining it is exactly how I understand shear when it comes to fascia. And then Carla Stecco comes along and says that in order to activate fasciacytes, we have to compress and shear fascia, have a loaded compression, right? So shearing basically is taking, two or more, and in the case of fascia, I mean, it's going to be like a bunch of fibers, right? It's never just going to be two pieces, but taking something that feels like or looks like or is acting like it's one piece of something and moving it in opposite directions to break those pieces apart. And in the case of fascial shearing, what you want to do is load an area of fascia with compression or weight, and you're going to either do this with kinetics partner techniques, right? My method, maybe you're a body worker and you can load with your forearm, although that is really hard work. I tried that for a year. Or you're going to put yourself on a foam roller or a lacrosse ball or use some other kind of tool, right, to create that compression. So you're going to load it, and then you're going to hopefully pin that or compress that piece of fascia to the bone, not all the way through. We're not doing a tack and stretch. That's what I'm always teaching. We're compressing to the bone and then creating the broadest range of motion we can with whatever we're doing. So for example, if I want to release my biceps fascia, if it's stringy and stuck together, I'm gonna load it with a compression, right? And then I'm gonna move and it's maybe going to clunk. This is the only visual I have while standing here, and I definitely have clunks here, but this is not a very good tool, not very much weight. So the point is slow, like deliberate drag with resistance almost from the other side, where two forces are working together to create that shear effect, like that drawing I just showed you. So I hope that makes sense. And again, just to reiterate, whenever you're trying to do fascia release or maybe seeking out a body worker, I encourage you, or at least I'm just going to tell you for myself, I'm always going to be looking for that compress and shear effect as my primary goal. And my secondary goal, kind of as a natural consequence of doing compression and shearing, is to do some pin and stretch or some manual manipulation, compression, right? Massage, where I'm going to activate fibroblasts and synthesize collagen. And then, of course, all the other nice things that come with getting a massage. So I'm not anti-massage at all. It's just really hard to get that shear effect without the person, under that compression doing the movement to actually, because usually you need two forces working together to create that shearing effect. I hope it makes sense. Let me know in the comments below. All right, and then number 3, fascia responds to the nervous system. And I know that this is quite a broad statement or fact. It's kind of generalized, and we're going to get more specific in upcoming episodes, but I wanted to bring it up here because of what I talked about in number 1, where you're really looking for safety first. So fascia responds to the nervous system in multiple ways. And like I said, we're going to dive into that a little bit more in upcoming episodes. So this is kind of like maybe the introduction to fascia and the nervous system, at least for our Fascia Facts series. Whatever is happening in our nervous system, in my opinion, again, this is my opinion, my theory, my experience with clients the last 10 years. I'm not claiming that what I'm saying now is fact. This is somewhat of a fact that you can look up with some of what I'm about to say. But my theory is that the nervous system is kind of governing everything all the time. And the rest of us, like our organs, our circulatory system, our, even heart rate and blood flow, all are kind of beholden to the nervous system. So if you are in fight or flight, if you're resting, if you are super stressed out, if you're fighting with your spouse, if you, I don't know, like so many things could affect our nervous system. If you're healing from trauma, if you have anxiety, all of these are kind of symptomatic or part of what happens through our nervous system to regulate our behavior. The nervous system's primary job is to keep us alive. It's to keep us safe. And so starting when we're young, our nervous system tries to learn about the world and then about us, and then tries to automate behavior to keep us as safe as possible. And we're gonna actually have a whole series, just like these fascia facts, on the nervous system. So I'm not gonna go super deep here, but something that I wanted to bring up here that you could look up right now if you just love this and you want to take it a little further than I'm going to today, is that within your fascia you have a whole bunch of interoceptors, exteroceptors, and proprioceptors. And of course, those are, related to the nervous system. They're neurons, and they relay information and they communicate between the brain and body. And so the fact that you have a bunch of those in your a bunch of those in your fascial system links it to the nervous system for cueing behavior, for proprioception, for regulating balance and movement potential. But even more so than that, you have pain receptors in the fascia itself, which of course communicate to your nervous system and your brain, right? Whether you are in pain or not. And then there is the part of the nervous system where, in my opinion, if you are chronically stressed out or chronically anxious or chronically feeling traumatized and you're looking for healing, but you're carrying a lot of tension due to a nervous system response, that's going to create kind of an imprint on your fascial system. So my theory about it is that whatever is going on in your nervous system consistently creates the texture that your fascia is going to hold. So if your fascia is brittle and dehydrated, that's indicative of something going on in the nervous system, versus if your fascia is just dense or thick, that's going to maybe indicate something else. So really kind of fascinating here. And I know like this isn't necessarily creating a huge specific takeaway today, but I wanted to introduce it, and we're going to dive in deeper in upcoming episodes. But the number one thing I want you to keep in mind today is this whole thing of safety. So whenever you're doing fascia release, You want to feel safe. If you don't feel safe and you're trying to like push through and like force it, I don't think you're going to get a good result. This is why I kind of cringe when I see people like smashing their fascia and they, you know, or they call it like, you know, the calf smash or the quad smash or the, I don't like the term, I don't want to smash my fascia. But mostly it's because there isn't as much talk about why someone shouldn't do something like that if they have a nervous system response where they don't feel safe. So if you are somebody who can handle a lot of intensity while feeling totally safe, then I say go for it. You know, use your full body weight, do as much as you can in as little amount of time as you can, because you're gonna be super effective and then you don't have to spend as much time doing fascia release. So there we go. That is episode 3, and now I want to hear from you. So I'd love to hear anything from what I shared today that really stood out to you for your particular situation right now. And it could be positive, it could be, I hate using the word negative, but I mean, if it's enlightening you about a challenge that you're currently facing, maybe you're trying to heal something, I would love to know if any of this really resonates. If you're like, oh my God, yes, I'm gonna totally use this to help myself heal from an injury or heal from trauma, then I would love to hear that in the comments below. I will come talk to you there. And if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We have new videos that go out every single week on the topics of fascia, pain, the nervous system, healing, trauma, all kinds of good stuff. So I hope you'll stick around, and I'll see you next time.